Alright, I'm gonna come out and admit right off the bat that I am probably one of the worst Scooby Doo fans there is. Scooby Doo is anciently old, starting way back in 1969. That makes the franchise 50 years and a few months kind of old. Scooby Doo has existed throughout my entire life, and when I was first introduced to it at the age of probably like 3 or 4, I hated the show. I don't know if it was the crappy animation quality of the 70s, or the actual character designs, or just the really repetitive nature of each episode that never really gripped with me, but I was always just disgusted at seeing it on my TV screen when I was younger. And then the live action movies came out, and say what you will about them, I loved them. Maybe it was because I recognized Mr. Bean in the crowd, maybe it was because it had real people and better graphics, or maybe I just liked the adult humor that didn't click until years and years later.
Dorky chicks like you turn me on too.
Either way, since then, I've always seen Scooby-Doo as a bit of a backseater event. New cartoon adaptations of the show show up and pass. Sometimes they look great, sometimes they look weird, but apparently the writing is top-notch, and sometimes there's a whole new CGI movie in the works. Yes, today, Scooby-Doo is back in the limelight, and in a whole new adaptation once again. Technically, we've seen CGI Scooby before, but this is all CGI, and it's changing the face of Mr. Doo forevermore. Until yet another 2D cartoon pops up. Now there's a million new trailers that have come out recently, and apparently making content on these new trailers is, pretty good for my channel, to say the least. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. So do expect to see a whole new series type popping up here, and since I forgot to mention it last time, please subscribe. I can see the percentage of you who aren't subscribed, so if you want more coverage, you know what to do. And the Christmas crunch is coming in now, so uploads are doubling up to 2 videos a week again. So the Scooby Doo movie, or Scoob as it's actually called, is currently set to release on May 15th, 2020, and it's been a tad bit divisive with audiences. It's not exactly cutting fans in half or anything, but there is a hint of disagreement found in this film, mainly because it is changing everything. Retconning plotlines, swapping out actors' roles, and reshaping how the Scooby-Dooby world actually presents itself. And while I will also be detailing each little change that is coming up in this new movie, while doing some extra research into all of the notches of the Scoob movie, I found something even bigger that makes this Scoob V an even more defining step that is actually going to massively change the future of Scooby-Doo and some similar projects around it as well. But first, let's start with something simple, the story. While Scooby-Doo has had a lot of years to cultivate their own lore and backstory, this film is kind of taking up the mantelpiece as being the new norm for how the Scooby-Doo world works, retconning any kind of backstory that existed before it. This is mainly clear through the prominence of showing off the characters' origin stories of how Shaggy met Scooby and how the rest of Mystery Inc. met and became their established group. With this film suggesting that the two met as young kids and pups on a beach while Scooby-Doo was being chased by a police officer for being a stray, whilst previous iterations of them meeting as older teenagers or as baby infants from A Pup Named Scooby-Doo are tarnished away. Everything contradicts, so it might as well not exist at all. This film also suggests that Shaggy and Scooby were the last to be connected with the mystery gang, and that they met on Halloween during trick-or-treating. And now these kind of changes are pretty normal, and we've all seen story retconning in all sorts of films in the past. What really matters most though is how effective these changes are. And I feel the same way as most people probably did when they watched this trailer, in that just seeing the bedroom scene between young Shaggy and Scooby was enough to see that this story arc isn't any kind of disaster. If anything, it looks like there's some real room for emotion as we click into the wholesome relationship elements of a human and their dog, something the vast majority of us have felt at some point in our lives. And though some people are bummed out by it, it certainly isn't the most significant change that we're going to discuss, especially to a casual fan like me. It doesn't matter to me. Though the way this trailer seems to be setting things up, I imagine the plotline will be something similar to a general alien mystery going on as the main direct arc of the film, whilst the emotional focus will be on Shaggy and Scooby as a pair. Since this film highlights the introduction of the collar and how important it is to the two pals, you can bet that this film is going to involve the two breaking up during the events of the present, with plenty of flashbacks to explain the emotional significance of each story beat. The two are taken away, they disagree, they break up, they learn how much they love each other since the moment they met, the mystery is solved, it was totally the police officer this whole time, and everyone leaves all happy and grand. Or at least, that's my teaser prediction. The only other thing the synopsis really tells us is that it's the gang's biggest challenge yet, as they have to plot to summon the ghost dog Cerberus. Interesting. It's still about relationships though. So with that out of the way, let's talk bigger, more prominent changes, and something a tad more divisive for a couple of reasons: the voice actors. Say what you want about the roles themselves or the bigger context, it's undeniable that there's a hint of a different feel. This isn't classic Scooby Doo, and I'm pretty sure that is exactly the point. With the film doing so much retconning and reinventing, this simply is making a mark of the next step forwards for the franchise. Let's discuss the specifics and the good and the bad. The biggest one to notice is Shaggy, for a handful of reasons. The iconic and go-to Shaggy voice actor for the last 2 decades has been Matthew Lillard, starting as the live-action version of Shaggy with a good impersonation, to being called out for it by the OG Shaggy voice actor.
You made me sound like a total space cadet, man!
I'm sorry you feel the way. I was.
To then taking up the mantle when they passed away. He's the perfect role for Shaggy for the foreseeable future. But he's omitted from this new era of Scooby Doo. Kinda odd. Even stranger is the fact that he and the voice actor for Daphne had no clue that they were being replaced until the trailer released. That kind of context on its own is just a massive disappointment to hear for the film. I can understand replacements happen, but shafting away your previous actors without even a word of a heads up and just abandoning them without so much of a phone call is just a blatant dick move. So shame on you, Warner Brothers, have some integrity. But looking objectively at just the new guy, Will Forte, there's something noticeably different to Shaggy's voice. It's still got that same pitch as before, but it's a whole less dopey sounding. That's the best way I'm really going to be able to describe it, I'm afraid. Potentially, and this is just speculation on my part, maybe the studio wanted to make an active decision to stray a little further away from the weedy stereotypes of Shaggy's character, and so by making him sound less high, it would reinvent the character to be a bit more appropriate, especially considering the young audience of today and the internet calling them out for it. Either way, he sounds less stoned, honestly, which may portray his previous sound, still makes sense-ish from a logical standpoint going forwards. Additionally, and this one's a lot more disappointing for people, his speech idiosyncrasy of always saying "like" is, sorry, that was a terrible impression, but we're going with it anyway, is not featured once within this teaser trailer. This speech pattern is even more iconic to how the Shaggy character presents himself and is a bit of a concern for fans, but I figure it'll probably still exist, it just hasn't in this mini 2-minute trailer. Or Warner Brothers is really going off the deep end to make him more square and undopified. Can't retcon Scoob's middle name as being Doobie though.
Middle name?
Doobie?
Talk about toasted.
But voice performance changes continue beyond just Shaggy. Scooby Doo himself sounds a little bit different to previous iterations, but that is less on the movie and more on the franchise as a whole. The voice actor is still the same, however over time the logic behind Scooby's speech impediment has slowly changed, with him expanding into saying full sentences, emphasizing a little less of all those R sounds he replaces letters with, and generally he just talks a whole lot more. To me, this is a bit jarring, but is easy enough to get behind eventually. The only part that really gets at me is that puppy Scoob sounds exactly the same as adult Scoob, when I feel I prefer a little more youth in his tone, but ah well. There's also Fred, who's voiced by Zac Efron instead of Welker, the voice of Scooby Doo. I guess the company wanted to invest their extra slot with a celebrity for those trending views? I don't know. I'm very mad about it. It's Zac Efron. And then the final change that's pretty hard to miss is the fact that this is an entire CGI animated movie. I mean, maybe it'll dip into live action a la SpongeBob SquarePants, but I doubt it. And that's not really that significant. Sure, it's new for Scooby Doo, but it's just the film industry doing as it does. 2D simply doesn't work as well as it used to in comparison to full 3D CGI. Pixar, DreamWorks and Disney are up on top, and SpongeBob got the right idea. Simpsons might still be 2D, but Scooby Doo is certainly not gonna fight back against the trend. It just works that way. Sorry, classic fans. So all of these little changes all mashed together to give us a Scooby Doo that's a little change to the norm to what we're used to. Some of the changes aren't bad, some of them are disappointing to say the least, but all are entirely intentional. This is a new Scooby Doo, and it's setting the stage for something far bigger than just the Scooby Doo franchise. So I was doing research on what this film has to offer, doing as I do, and I come across an old article dated back in 2016 that blew my expectations out of the water if what it claims is true. And that's because the movie is said to be the first movie in a lineup of the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. That's right. There's a new cinematic universe in the works here. And there I was thinking the trope was coming to an end. So for those of you that don't know, Hanna-Barbera is an American animation studio that was founded by the creators of Tom and Jerry. As a production, they've produced all sorts of cartoon classics from the 20th century, including the Flintstones, the Yogi Bear Show, the Jetsons, Wacky Races, the Smurfs, and yeah, Scooby Doo. They all have that same kind of feel, and that's because they all have the same root. Now, the studio got swallowed by Warner Brothers Animation, or that WAG logo you keep seeing on the Lego movies, and they certainly aren't letting their IPs die there. This Scooby-Doo movie was originally slated for a September 2018 release, but has since been delayed to 2020, but that doesn't stop the fact that this is still intended to be the first installment of the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And the more I researched into this crazy idea, the more the facts seem to solidify. The studio is currently developing new films based on the Jetsons, the Flintstones, and Wacky Races. They may be ancient, but they're iconic. And clearly Warner Brothers believes that these classics can make a resurgence and sell again. I personally have never seen the Jetsons, and I don't even recall a rerun appearing on TV, but the Flintstones was enjoyable, and Wacky Races was my favourite show to watch when I was like 9. I would literally stay up at 11 o'clock at night to watch it, and I can definitely see that film doing well both in concept and in the abundance of Waluigi memes that'll spread out from Dick Dastardly, the main character antagonist of the show. But beyond just what's in production, there's still more to see. Wacky Races in its own right has a handful of references to other Hanna-Barbera productions, but the main one to notice is with the Slag Brothers, a couple of cavemen who can fix up their car using their clubs and shouting gibberish. Though somewhat their own character, visually they look pretty identical to one of Hanna-Barbera's other IPs with Captain Caveman. Captain Caveman! I didn't know I had that war cry burned in my memory, but there it is. Now this guy is supposedly the world's first superhero, a caveman with super strength, objects hidden in his hair, and a club that allows him to fly. A wacky character to say the least, and this guy has made many other cameo appearances, including quite frequently in many Scooby Doo adaptations. So he's already solidly connected to Scooby Doo, right? Well, he's not done with them just yet, because when looking into the cast of the new Scoob movie, what do you know, credited to Tracy Morgan is the role of Captain Caveman. Whether it's mid-plot or in true Marvel style is to be featured in the end credits, this film is for certain gonna be the start of a whole new giant making their mark on the filming industry. And a first for an animated cinematic universe. And it continues more than that. Other sections of the cast list credit the roles of Blue Falcon and Dynamite Dog Wonder, another duo from a Batman-esque show that also featured the Scooby Gang quite often, as well as big bad Robbie Rotten Waluigi villain Dick Dastardly, which I am particularly looking forward to seeing in this film. Wacky Races was gone from this world far too soon. Wait, it got rebooted in 2017? Well, looking at that reboot, there's some new questions with these franchises coming together. For example, if this is gonna be one big cinematic thing eventually, what's the art style gonna be? The Wacky reboot has 2D animation with 3D CGI plastered in, and only has half the original cast. So it'll be interesting to see if they get the full CGI remaster like I would expect, in that just if it's a film, it'll be fully CGI. And it'll be interesting to see how far each growing series spreads their new legs once they pop up. How much of each cast will we see in their own movies or meshing together? Actually, I had a discussion awfully similar to this about a year ago, speaking about the potential of a Nintendo or a Smash cinematic universe. It covers the likes of Detective Pikachu, the Sonic movie, and the upcoming Mario movie made by Illumination Entertainment, so give that a look if you have some spare time. Might be fun to see. Wait, hold on a minute. So, while I was editing this whole thing and getting up the screenshot of Matthew Lillard's tweet, I then looked into that article and found something especially interesting as a little paragraph telling a tiny bit more about the story even there. It says, the story sees the Mystery Inc. gang join forces with other heroes of the Hanna-Barbera universe to save the world from Dick Dastardly and his evil plans. That not only is more updated because it has the later release, but when I then double checked the trailer, what is the very first thing we see? A big alien spaceship that doesn't look like the one that Shaggy and Scooby got put into. No, instead, it actually looks like a spaceshipy, evil-er version of Dick Dastardly's vehicle. They're not just going to show up as a cameo appearance at the end credits like Avengers or something. They are intertwined with this plotline, and it's gone over everybody's heads. I am way more excited for this film very suddenly. Also, on top of all of that as well, this is like my second day of the edit that I'm actually pitching something in, another thing that's gone completely over everybody's heads is another reference to another Hanna-Barbera project directly in the trailer, and that is with the IKEA joke. Everyone's so focused on the actual IKEA element of the joke, nobody's realizing the part that they've kind of tried to hide at that exact moment, being that Shaggy says the Falcon Fury. The Falcon Fury, as far as I can tell, doesn't exist. But you know what does exist?
Quickly, Dynamite, to the Falcon car with these Falcon alarms. At the Falcon lair,
IKEA.
Falcon Fury! Did you say IKEA?
So clearly, this is supposed to be Dynamite and Blue Falcon's little spaceship.
Maybe this can lead us to Scooby and Shaggy. Trace amounts of mustache oil, 12-year-old scotch.
This trailer does a good job of showing off the core Scooby Doo element, as well as really sneakily hinting all these extra IPs as well. We don't think about the mean machine in the trailer because it's labeled with Scooby Doo generically saying something evil. We don't think that's actually anything directly connected to anything, it's just, yeah, looks pretty evil. And then this one here, you might have thought for 5 seconds, what is the Falcon Fury, but considering you don't know, you probably didn't think about it. Either way, this story is like 5 times more interesting than the one that we think we're getting. Anyway, back to Dazz from the past or whatever. But yes, after all that researching and rabbit holing, it's fair to say that this Scooby Doo movie is gonna make massive ripples in the future of animated films. It's got about as much content to run with as an actual Scooby sandwich, apparently. And like, what about Scrappy Doo? Do you think he'll pop up for yet another movie? Or maybe they'll hold him off for a sequel if they're smart about it? Or never mention him at all? Or speaking more of that plotline, why does nobody mention that Scooby can talk when they first meet him? Is it just the norm for this world? I mean, I guess if we consider all of the other connected worlds, then I guess it does kind of make sense that just anything goes, but still, odd. And with it being a modern movie, of course the jokes are gonna be a little shifted as well. That IKEA joke exists. I don't know how good or bad it really is, but it feels strange to hear from them. The comedic timing is great though. And who knows, maybe they'll even try to push or reference some memes. I doubt it, and probably wouldn't enjoy it too much, but Scooby Doo has an abundance of memes collected over the years. I mean, most are just ugly screenshots or certain reaction gifs, and no one can forget the whole charade of Shaggy's power, so who knows how down with the kids this movie is gonna try to be, but it'll be interesting either way. Whatever the case, this movie has caught the eye of a lot of people, and I think the actual ripple that this movie is gonna make is far bigger than any of us are expecting as of right now. This film is the first stepping stone to the first animated cinematic universe, which on its own has so much more room to breathe than a Marvel one. It's Warner Brothers' ultimate plan going forwards, and it could very well revive some of the crazy era of cartoons from the 70s to the 90s. I, for one, cannot wait to see what madness is sure to ensue soon. For now, though, my name's been Dazz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. Oh, that Wacky Races reboot really had me ecstatic for a good moment there, but if there's a full film coming up with a bigger cast, then I am absolutely all for it. Let the Waluigi memes reign supreme!